All right, so let's get on with the workshop. We are Matt, Mel, and Laura. Mel and Laura over there. And we have spent a ridiculous amount of time researching and preparing this workshop for you all. I just want to say that none of the information is our opinion. It is advice from the experts. We are not telling you how to run your relationships or your lives. We are simply offering knowledge, so please respect this fact. If you have any questions, please write them down and hold them until the end. After our presentation, Sarah, who was here last week, our marriage counselor, will lead a Q&A session where she can answer all of your questions to the best of her ability. So please take full advantage of the fact that there's a free marriage counselor here for you all. Before we get started, let's take a look at a conversation dynamic that Sarah talked about last week.
There's all this pressure.
Sorry.
And sometimes it feels like it's right up on me. And I can just feel it, like literally feel it in my head. And it's relentless. And I don't know if it's going to stop. I mean, that's the thing that scares me the most, is that I don't know if it's ever going to stop.
Do you have a nail in your head?
It's not about the nail.
Are you sure? I'll bet if we got that out of there.
Stop trying to fix it.
No, I'm not trying to fix it. I'm just pointing out that maybe the nail is causing.
You always do this. You always try to fix things when what I really need is for you to just listen.
See, I don't think that is what you need. I think what you need is to get the nail.
See,
out.
fine.
Okay, fine. I will listen. Fine.
It's just, sometimes it's like, there's this achy, I don't know what it is. I'm not sleeping very well at all, and all my sweaters are snagged. I mean, all of them.
That sounds really hard.
It is. Ow!
Come on, if you would just
Don't.
So the video is funny because it exaggerates a very real conversation dynamic that most of us are very familiar with. However, despite its hilarity, it carries an incredibly important message for men. Learn to be a good listener, empathize, and stop being Mr. Fix-It. For those of you who are single in the audience, thanks for coming. Hopefully you know that this stuff applies to you just as much as it applies to people who are in relationships. Because none of us want to end up like this guy. Love doesn't maintain itself isn't just a fancy title. It has real meaning. Establishing and maintaining love takes work, and sometimes it's hard work. Everyone knows the divorce statistics. So should we all just give up on love and order pizza? Obviously not. Don't forget, humans are wired for connection, and it's in our DNA. So if you don't want to be a statistic, it's going to take work. Thank you all for taking the first step and coming. So we are a communication studies club, and we like communication tools that can improve our everyday lives, right?
Right.
Well, today our presentation isn't going to focus totally on communication. This is because effective communication will not solve all of your problems. Love is an incredible dynamic with a multitude of factors that affect it. Effective communication is only one tool inside your toolbox of love. So going into this presentation, be aware that you need more than just communication to have healthy relationships in your life. Don't worry though, we've got communication tools in here, but we also have emotional tools, and that's primarily what we're going to focus on. So to start off, we're obviously going to be talking a lot about love. But what is love? I think getting everybody on the same page regarding love is important. The dictionary defines it as an intense feeling of deep affection. But can 6 words really capture the meaning of love? Obviously not. Poets and philosophers alike have been attempting to define it throughout history. It is a short word, easy to spell, difficult to define, and impossible to live without. Encyclopedia Britannica defines love as something impossible to define. The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy comically says, avoid it if at all possible. The Greeks had 4 different words for it: eros, philia, agape, and storge. And one poet describes love as the final result of the chemical blending of unrelated feelings which, once synthesized, creates an emotion that is independent of the confines of time or the elements of existence. Taking a college approach towards the definition of love, I'll lean on the research of a man named Sternberg. He came up with a triangular model that is similar to how the ancient Greeks treated love. He places 3 factors of love on the vertices of the triangle, which are intimacy, commitment, and passion. Combine all 3 factors and you have consummate love, which is what we'll be referring to when we talk about love here today. If you only have 2 of the factors, you do not have consummate love, and instead have a lower form. Only have one of the factors, and you either have brotherly love, empty love, or the one-night stand kind of love. We could spend the whole hour talking about this triangular model, but that's not the intent of this workshop. This model is here to illustrate that there are many kinds of love. Only you can place your relationship in the appropriate place on this triangle. By the end of the workshop, I hope that you all will have some tools that can help you move towards consummate love. And now I'll hand it off to Laura, who will talk about the central theme to this whole workshop, which is the love bank.
Okay, so I wanted to ask you all a question. Have any of you ever had a friend that you haven't seen in years, and then you get together with them and it feels like old times? Yeah, I have a friend like that, and that is a kind of a really good definition of what the love bank is. That person has filled your love bank so full that you can instantly connect with that person again. And I'm sure if you've had that type of a connection with someone, you probably had the one where you see the person and you dread that person. You're like, oh, I don't want to see that person. And those are the people that have a negative account in your love bank. A love bank is something that you have with everyone, and it's very important in an emotional relationship because you want to fulfill that person's needs. The needs that we're all going to talk about from Willard Harley's book, it has 10 emotional needs, and those are different for each person. So the ones that are most important to you are the ones that are going to fill your love bank the most. The biggest part about romantic love is it takes a lot of work. It's a skill, and being in love requires the work, and it also requires that you know that person's love needs so you can fulfill them. And the most important emotional needs for you are going to fill your bank the most. So these are the 10 needs, and they are different for everyone. In the book, he puts them in a certain order, and he says some are kind of more likely to be for women, and some of them are more likely to be for men. But that's not always true. Some people have different emotional needs. Like he says affection is one of the number 1 for women, but my personal one is conversation. As you can see, there's affection, sexual fulfillment, conversation, recreational companionship, honesty and openness, attractiveness, financial support, domestic support, family commitment, and admiration. So, like I said before, gender doesn't determine which emotional needs. So when you listen today, just listen to that one that really sounds like it's your number 1, and it's probably your number 1, not counting what order we actually go in.
Okay, so I'm going to start off with the first emotional need, and it is affection. It typically falls under her emotional needs, but as Laura said, gender doesn't matter. It can be number 1 for a guy as well, but I'm going to kind of speak from a female perspective. I personally love affection. It's my number 1 need. I crave it. It's very important to me. I'm obnoxious about hugging, and it doesn't matter if it's my partner or if it's my friends or my family. You get bombarded with hugs. So I put up this meme up here. I don't know if you can see it. It says, "Get back here and let me love you." That is me in a nutshell. So the author of this book that we're referring to is His Needs, Her Needs. He explains that to most women, affection symbolizes security, protection, comfort, and approval. And these are vitally important commodities in the woman's eyes. or guys, if it's your top 5 needs. When someone shows their partner affection, it basically sends a message that I'm thinking about you and you're important to me. And girls like to be thought about. I don't know, I'm going to speak for me, but I like it. So sometimes it can feel for the girl that affection can kind of stop from their partner's end once they're committed or married. And sometimes that's true. Sometimes men expect for their emotional need of sex to be fulfilled without understanding that affection is kind of where it all starts. So Dr. Harley asserts that when it comes to sex and affection in a loving, committed relationship, you can't have one without the other. And I completely agree with this. And I interpret this to mean that they kind of feed into each other and they just make this one big, awesome, super cycle, if you will, affection to sex to affection, and it's awesome. So the key is that affection must be a sustainable, conscious act on a daily basis if your partner, if that's one of their emotional needs. What it does is it creates oxytocin, which is that love drug, and it helps foster this emotional bond that's critical to successful relationships. So, what does affection look like? It doesn't necessarily mean that it's just physical touch. It can come in a bunch of different forms. So here's some examples, but it's not all inclusive. Basically, affection is anything that encompasses an act that someone of the other party does that portrays, I'm thinking about you and I care about you. So that can be a hug, a hand on the lower back, a caress just when you're walking by or passing. One of my favorites are random love notes and cards, and you can kind of like leave little post-it notes around the house that says, I love you, or you're super beautiful, or whatever. I also think one of my tips is to every once in a while throw in a random, really, really good one where it's super specific about what their quality is that you really love about them, or something that they do all the time that you really love, and also reinforce that with how it makes you feel and why it impacts you. You can really get a lot of bang for your buck by sneaking those in there. Another one is a random email, text, or call throughout the day. Flowers, and I want to do a caveat. Not all girls like flowers. And my husband watches this. I want some flowers. But I want you guys to pay attention. Flowers are not necessarily valuable to all women. So pay attention and understand whether they place a value on them or not, because if you don't and you constantly send them flowers, then it can have a reverse effect. So there's a caveat to that. Holding hands, initiate an invitation to dinner, and then last, I put chivalry is not dead. Open the damn doors. Yes. I've been with my husband for 12 years, and to this day, he always opens the car door. And there was a couple times where he didn't, and I just sat there and I just waited for him. It's like you're missing something. So that's what that can look like.
So the fun one. Sex isn't very hard to understand as an emotional need, but the myths and unrealistic expectations surrounding sex can cloud it in a fog of uncertainty. Men may think about it more, but we definitely don't think about it every 7 seconds. And there's plenty of research that debunks that myth. So for the sake of not going off on a sex tangent, let's all agree that men and women desire sex almost equally. It can be a his need or it can be a her need. The most important thing to take away regarding sexual fulfillment is what Mel touched on, which is that sexual fulfillment is directly tied to the need of affection. In other words, if your partner isn't getting their need for affection met, then how can you expect them to want to meet your need for sex? You can't. So if you have sexual fulfillment as a top need, but don't feel satisfied in that area, then you probably aren't meeting your partner's top emotional needs. Because when needs are met, sex happens. So, does sex lead to affection based off what I just said? No. And this is the major takeaway. Affection leads to sex.
Okay, so next is conversation, and this is my top need, so it's very personal to me. And I wanted to say that it can be met by almost anyone. It's not necessarily something that has to be met in a relationship. But however, the person who needs that the most will deposit so many love bank units that you probably will fall in love with them. So the point that I really want to emphasize is that conversation, it should be mutually enjoyable. So if you're having trouble with your conversations being pleasant, it's a good idea to avoid them until you can figure out a way to make them pleasant, because it's kind of like a big cycle. If you keep having bad conversations, they're just going to continue to be bad. And the reason I know this is my top need is because I often use conversation just to talk. Like, I don't have a point to the conversation. I just want to talk. I just want to get it out. And if you do that too, and you enjoy conversation just because it's conversation, not because it leads to something, and you haven't been able to talk to someone in a while, maybe you feel kind of frustrated, it's probably one of your top emotional needs. The next thing we're going to do is a really quick exercise on how to foster good conversation. So the 4 things that make conversation enjoyable are that you can use it to inform and investigate. You can focus the attention on topics of mutual interest. You make sure you balance the conversation so everybody has an equal opportunity to talk. And then you give the other person your undivided attention. So if you could really quickly find a partner, just one partner, we're going to have you talk about your pal of the day, which is, hey, what was the good thing that happened to me today? Oh, that's the opposite. I'm sorry, that's the bad thing that happened. The wow is the good thing that happened. So find someone and then try to give them your undivided attention and balance the conversation. Awesome. It looks like everybody was using their great attending skills. I like to see that. Practicing listening skills is very important. So thank you. Now Mel is going to continue on.
So recreational companionship, defined as just a shared interest and participation in activities. This typically falls under a man's top 5 emotional needs. Actually, it is typically is number 2, right behind sex. So that was interesting for me to find out. So similarly to how women can kind of feel how affection stops once you're committed or married, ladies, we are not the only culprits. Sometimes men can feel that the whole recreational companionship piece stops on our end once we got the man in the bed. So an example of that is like during the dating process, the girls are like, oh yeah, sure, I love camping. Let's go camping every weekend. And then boom, you're married. I'm like, ooh, I don't really like camping that much. Go ahead and go on without me. So that can be a bummer for a guy. The truth of the matter is that men actually place a surprising amount of importance in sharing activities with their partner. It's actually oftentimes how they select their life partner, because it's someone that they can have fun with and enjoy activities that they like to do. And then oftentimes it seals the deal in the dating process if you can continually have a great time participating in activities that they enjoy. So Dr. Harley says that the recipe to a successful relationship is a minimum of 15 hours of undivided attention per week. And this can certainly include sharing activities that you guys both enjoy doing together. So, how do you discover shared interests? I mean, it can sound kind of like a no-brainer because a lot of shared interests can uncover naturally in your discussions. But a lot of times it can be difficult to realize what the both of you really truly like doing, because you assume that the other might not like it, or that you haven't even tried it yet and that you wouldn't like it. So the trick is to give everything, almost everything, a shot and see how it goes rather than just assuming. So we printed out several copies of Dr. Harley's recreational enjoyment inventory. You might have grabbed it on your way in, but it's on the blue table and you can grab one on the way out. I will say a little caveat, it was last updated in 1992, so some of the activities that he listed like there was something like metal work. I don't know. But there's a lot of activities. There's a lot of blank spaces for others. So play around with activities that might not be on there. But you can use it to rate each activity together and then start trying them out. Give it a shot. So another tip, I like to sprinkle in little tips that I found have been successful, is to find just one activity that the both of you share that's your little secret. Like something that only the two of you know that you're doing it. No one else knows. And maybe that can be working towards a goal, like maybe you want to train for a 5K together. Well, don't blast about it on Facebook. Keep that between you two, and then it's kind of fun. So something to think about. The next is honesty and openness.
So Dr. Harley says that honesty cannot be compromised in a relationship. Dishonesty makes the largest love bank withdrawals, and if honesty and openness is a top emotional need of your partner, then the withdrawals will be even larger. So how to be more open and honest? Dr. Harley has the policy of radical honesty. It says, reveal to your spouse as much information about yourself as you know. Your thoughts, feelings, habits, likes, dislikes, personal history, daily activities, and plans for the future. The most important component of radical honesty is being emotionally honest. Emotional honesty is expressing whatever you're feeling, good and bad. What emotional honesty does is it helps bring up stuff as it's bothering you, which prevents things from building up and hitting you like a freight train when it all boils over. However, you must bring up your emotions, your emotional honesty with respect. You must bring it up with respect. Deliberately filtering out any disrespect is an absolute requirement of the policy of radical honesty to be effective. Dr. Harley also believes and recommends snooping. This is where the radical part of his policy comes in. He believes in sharing passwords, schedules, and whereabouts. He doesn't believe there should be any privacy in marriage. He says that a spouse should have the right to check on the other spouse without them knowing at any time. It alleviates suspicion and it builds trust in the end. And so physical attractiveness. Remember how we mentioned at the beginning that when these needs get grouped into his needs or her needs, it's easy to think that the book is being sexist. In the physical attractiveness chapter, this held especially true. When we are talking about this need, we have to realize that physical attractiveness can be a need for women just as much as it can be a need for men. When one person identifies physical attractiveness as one of their most important emotional needs, it means that physical appearance affects them in a dramatic way. When they find their partner physically attractive, it makes them very happy. And when they find their partner unattractive, it makes them very unhappy. It's as simple as that. So if your partner places physical attractiveness high on their list, then by being physically attractive, you are meeting their need and making substantial love bank deposits. Mel, since this is such a controversial topic, I don't want to just be a man up here presenting a man's opinion, so Mel read this chapter just the same as I did, and Mel would like to say something as well.
I just wanted to give a female's perspective to when I read this chapter of the book. So if you haven't read the book yet, I really do recommend that you do. It was very pivotal in my relationship. I just read it last quarter and in this class, so I'm so thankful that I did. However, I did have an issue with this chapter, so I just wanted to share my perspective. And there is a lot of weight that puts forth into physical attractiveness, and that can mean different things for different people. And I just didn't want anyone to take away from it, that you have to be super hot to be loved, and that's not the case. And it really just, you can be beautiful inside and outside and all of that, but it really matters how your partner views you. And that's really all that matters. So I just wanted to have you guys take that away instead of when you read it and be like, oh, you're supposed to do your hair and shape your eyebrows. I don't have time for that.
So we'll just say it straight up. This chapter was written like 20 years ago, and it's extremely offensive towards women. To this fact, Dr. Harley on his website, I was reading some like emails or letters that women had sent in to him complaining about this chapter, and he states that he will definitely be rewriting the chapter. In my opinion, he needs to hurry up and get around to it. However, he does make a good point about physical attractiveness, and in his words, if you feel that people, men or women, should not have an emotional need for physical attractiveness, then I'm afraid we simply disagree. I don't think that emotional needs can be legislated or wished away. They are determined by a very complex physical and environmental factors that are easier to meet than to change. So to sum it up, if your partner places physical attractiveness high on their list, then by being physically attractive, you're meeting their need and making love bank deposits. If your partner doesn't have physical attractiveness on their list, don't worry about it.
So you might think, is it all about the money? But that's not what this need is about. I just wanted to ask you if before you were married or before you got into a relationship, if your partner had told you not to ever expect any income from them, would it affect your decision to marry them? Or what if your partner couldn't find work, or that you had to? You definitely have that need if, like me, you expected at some point in your life not to earn a living. I was a stay-at-home mom with my daughter for 3 years, and there was no income from me. The problem with that is a lot of couples have these hidden expectations or assumptions, and that can lead to resentment. So I hadn't explained that that was what I was going to do. Hey, guess what? I'm going to have a baby. I'm going to stay home with her. Well, you equate that to not having any income. And luckily for me, it went very well. My partner was okay with that, and they accepted it. But if you don't have that talked about beforehand, it can cause some resentment. So if you feel like these things are important to you, then it's probably a very important emotional need. It is one of my emotional needs, and like I said, I had always planned when I was young to be a stay-at-home mom. And so I could have explained that when we first got into a relationship. Hey, guess what? When I have kids, I really want to stay at home with them. That probably means I'm not earning any income during that time. So that make sure the other person's okay with that, and that's not one of their emotional needs, then you're not withdrawing the love bank units. Obviously, in other aspects of it, like if the person came to the point where they couldn't work, you wouldn't just be like, oh, well, guess what? I'm not going to stay with you because you can't work anymore. You would just find other ways to have them deposit love units into your love bank.
I hope this isn't too offensive of a meme, but I like it. So domestic support, this typically falls under a man's emotional need, but I really wanted to present it because it was one of my most profound learnings and takeaways from this book when I read it last quarter. It was one of my biggest mistakes as a spouse, not to recognize and acknowledge and honor this emotional need in my husband. So it was kind of like an aha moment. Light bulb went off 12 years later. I'm sorry, but it took me that long. But at least I'm doing it now. So as a woman, I'm sure you guys can relate, but productivity is always on our mind. Even when we're at work or school, we're constantly thinking what needs to get done at home. And it's almost completely mind-boggling to us, or at least to me, that men don't necessarily seem to feel the same way about that. It's very natural for us to expect that when our partner comes home from work or school or whatever they were doing, that not only do they feel that chores need to get done, but they want to help us get it done. And that's not always the case, and unfortunately it can lead to a disconnect that causes resentment in both ends. The woman will feel like, well, why doesn't he help me? I can't do this by myself. And the guy's like, well, I just want to relax and wind down after a hard day's work. I don't understand why she's on the case. That was me. Again, I'm sorry. So, the real dilemma presents itself. How can both parties get what they want and need? The man gets to relax and wind down in his man cave, and the woman feels truly supported and that the workload at home is not all just one-sided. Things have changed. I mean, women are working more now than they were a few decades ago, so the fair division of labor and that definition isn't necessarily as defined. It's become a major source of marital conflict. Sometimes it still can feel as though the domestic part of the partnership falls on the wife. So the first step is just learning how it truly is an emotional need for your partner to be able to wind down after work, and here's the clincher for me, having the house super clean is not as important to them as it is to you. That was a huge takeaway for me. I just assumed, I projected my own feelings that the house has to be spotless onto my husband, and he really doesn't even care. So that was super interesting. I had my husband read the book at the same time I was reading it on his tablet. I was like, is this true? He's like, yeah, I don't care. So that was awesome. So what's really important is to be supportive and understanding of this need and to cut yourself some slack. You can start letting a few things go, and it's going to feel really, really good. The clincher, another clincher is the man cave, and not to be resentful about it. I would really encourage getting excited about creating and encouraging this special space for him, and I really feel like if you have that sentiment towards it, they are really going to be very appreciative of that. So I'm quickly going to go through, this suggestion that the author has. I'm not going to go through everything, but it's basically a suggestion for how to divide the workload so both parties feel like they're getting kind of equal share out of this. I basically think of it as the domestic version of the NFL draft. And perhaps I have a completely skewed version of what a draft is, but this is how I look at it. So basically you just want to name each responsibility and then name the spouse who actually wants it accomplished. Now you're probably thinking, ladies, well, a lot of me is going to fall under that. But sometimes, you guys just have to be honest. Sometimes there is something specific that the guy really does want accomplished. And then you want to rate how important it is to that person. Make 2 lists, and then you do your draft. You start assigning, I'll take this one, I'll take this one. And then the remaining tasks, the one that no one wants to do, you kind of have to duke it out for whoever wants them done the most. So that's a suggestion that he has. It may or may not work, but something to take away as a possible tool for you. The main huge part of this, though, is to show genuine appreciation for their help when they do help you. I think we should just knock it off with, well, he should be doing it anyway, so why should I reward him? No. So your partner is helping you out, and the more you appreciate that from a genuine, kind, loving place, the more that they're going to do it for you. It's kind of like a I'll scratch your back, you'll scratch mine kind of situation, and it will create love bank deposits for the both of you.
Family commitment. This one's also one of my top needs. And mainly it's because you want your partner to be active in the moral and educational development of your children. The biggest indicator to this is that you crave your partner's involvement in the upbringing of your children. So whether they're helping to care for them or they're taking responsibility for how the children turn out, and also doing family activities as a group. I love the taking the responsibility for how the children turn out. Not just because I want to be like, well, she gets that from your side of the family, but also because when she does things that genuinely are good, I can say that in a positive attitude. She's really boisterous and outgoing, and that must come from how well you've raised her. The participation in these activities can kind of guarantee that you get a lot of deposits if this is one of your important needs. That one's huge for me. like swoon when I see my boyfriend with my daughter and them doing things together and enjoying it. And I also really love it when she's maybe giving me a hard time and he steps in and says, you're not going to treat your mom like that. And he takes over the responsibility of helping raise her in a moral way. This really triggers a lot of love feelings for me. I really love it when we all do group activities together. It can be something simple and free, like a family walk or going to the park together. He pushing her on the swing. Those are all things that fill my love bank for the family commitment. So that's why I put up there that participation in family activities, the family commitment is really big as doing things as a group.
So the appreciation that Mel was mentioning for showing it towards your partner when they do household chores, that kind of falls under the emotional need of admiration. Do you need your partner to be proud of you? Then this need is for you. When somebody feels admired by their partner, it creates a nuclear explosion of self-confidence, and it throws jet fuel on the fires of inspiration. It gives you ambition and drive and energy, and when you feel admired by your partner, you feel you're unstoppable and you're on top of the world. Criticism makes major withdrawals from the love bank of a person with admiration as a top need. So here's a tip. If you have to be critical of a person with admiration as a top need, try to use constructive criticism and make sure you criticize their actions and not them as a person to avoid making withdrawals. Criticize their actions, not the person. Criticize their actions, not the person.
Okay, so those were the 10 emotional needs from the book His Needs, Her Needs by Dr. Willard Harley. So I would recommend you checking it out. There are a couple other bits of information that we wanted to pull together and share with you guys. And one of them is the 4 horsemen. And I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Gottman, but he's super awesome. And I'll just let you know that the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse is a metaphor depicting the end of the times in the New Testament. They describe war, hunger, and death. So Dr. Gottman uses this metaphor to describe communication styles that can predict the end of a relationship. And I just want to caveat this with, if you see your relationship in these descriptions when I read them off to you, it's never too late to turn around. Like, you might be in a toxic relationship and you need to get the heck out of there, but in a lot of cases, it's not too late to knock it off and turn it around. So I wanted to caveat that. So I'm going to briefly describe the 4 horsemen, and to learn more about them, I really recommend you check out Dr. Gottman's Institute online. It's a really valuable resource for effective communication in relationships. And the first one is criticism, which is an attack on your partner at the core. In effect, you are dismantling his or her whole being. Criticizing your partner is different than offering a critique or voicing a complaint. So for example, a complaint would be, I was scared when you were running late and you didn't call me. I thought we had agreed that we would call each other. Criticism would be, you never think about how your behavior impacts me. You're so selfish. You never think of me. Contempt includes, but is not limited to, treating others with disrespect, mocking them with sarcasm, ridicule, name-calling, mimicking, and or body language, such as eye-rolling. I think we can all, to some level, kind of relate to this a little bit. I think it's a huge part of our human nature. But when a couple cannot manage to explain to each other why they are mad without resorting to hurtful name-calling and berating, it's certainly a recipe for disaster. Something to think about. So the next one is defensiveness. So when we feel accused unjustly, we fish for excuses that our partner will back off. So the wrong way would be her saying, hey, did you call Betty and Ralph to let them know that we're not coming tonight, as you promised? And he spikes back, I was just too darn busy today, as a matter of fact. You know how busy my schedule was. Why didn't you do it? That would be the wrong way. A better way would be to respond, oops, I forgot. I should have packed, or I should have asked you this morning. Let me call them right now. So there's kind of a difference there. Defensiveness breeds defensiveness. I don't know if you want to speak more to that, or
Just remember it.
yeah.
Make it a mantra. And when you feel yourself getting defensive, hopefully that pops in your head and you can shut it down so that you don't get defensive. You don't breed defensive in the other person that you're in an argument with. Because if you do, they'll get defensive and then they'll attack you and then you'll get defensive and you get a vicious circle.
So the last one is stonewalling. And stonewalling occurs when the listener withdraws from the interaction, shuts down, and closes himself or herself off from the other. And this behavior is, to me, I feel very understandable in an effort to protect oneself, but it does not contribute to a healthy communication style, which could ultimately improve the communication between the two people. Of all of the four horsemen, stonewalling is definitely prevalent in unhealthy relationships. Instead of talking and confronting the issue head on, couples tend to turn away and avoid each other. They kind of throw in the towel. And what this does is it causes resentment and it breaks the trust. And once that happens, it's kind of hard to rebuild after that.
John Gottman also has this thing that he talks about. It's called bids. So a bid can be a verbal or a nonverbal. It can be physical or it can be totally intellectual. It can be sexual or non-sexual. The key is that a bid for connection is an attempt to create the connection between the two people. Its function is to keep the relationship going in a positive direction. So partners will make bids to create, increase, maintain, and reestablish connection. So most of us, when we get home from school or we get home from work, the other person says, "Hey, how was your day? How was school? How was work?" Or the great one that I do all the time is you notice the other person's preoccupied, so you say, "What are you thinking about?" And a lot of times we'll sense that something's wrong, so we'll say, "Are you upset with me?" Well, those are all bids to the other person. The person who's making the bid, generally, of course, they would like a positive response. So what they don't want is a negative response, or no response at all. So John Gottman labels these three as turning towards, which is the positive response, and then turning against, which would be like angry, like, "Hey, don't talk to me right now. I have way too much stress at school. I can't talk about this right now." Or turning away, just shrugging and not saying anything at all. So if you want to connect with your partner, or even your friends, because friends do this as well, people all over make bids, you try to respond in a positive manner. John Gottman has a relationship workshop that he does, and he can predict with great accuracy whether people are going to stay together or not. And the way he does that is when the people who are making positive, turning towards type of responses rather than turning away or turning against. So try to do that in your own life. I've been trying to do it as well, making positive responses when the other person makes bids. And don't forget about the mail.
Don't forget, it's not about the mail. So that's our workshop. Thank you. Thank you, Laura and Mel, for being a great team and helping me do all this. For all of you Speak Out members that completed our survey online, this is separate from I'm now changing gears and going into a different topic, Canvas. For all of you that completed our Canvas survey, thank you. We have already read them. All the leadership has read all your responses. And that communication exercise that we did today, that was something that we threw in because somebody asked for more connection between the members of the group, which is something that we as a leadership team had kind of forgotten about. We were so focused on giving you knowledge and giving you all these great tools, we've forgotten what Speak Out was about. So we are listening to what you guys are saying, and thank you for filling the surveys out.
And if you haven't yet, it's
Get to it.
great to write it down and go do it.
How awesome were those cupcakes? They were from a bakery called Celebrations. It's a local business. It's over on Garland and Wall. And I went in and tried one, and I was in love. And they just are so amazing. So I'm glad you guys enjoyed them.
You have a question?
No, I was actually going to say they also have a Celebration Bakery out in the valley.
Yeah, they have one in the valley as well. They have a valley location, and you can just go in, and they have cupcakes like ready to eat. They're already made for you, and you get to pick one out. They have like 50 flavors. They had Snickers today when I picked those cupcakes up. They're delicious. We mentioned the questionnaires. We mentioned one of the questionnaires. We didn't mention the other. We have 2 questionnaires over there. One of them is the recreational companionship survey. The other one is the actual emotional needs survey. So you can kind of ask yourself, which ones are my most important emotional needs? And what Dr. Harley recommends is taking your top 5, or taking your partner's top 5 and focusing on meeting those, and vice versa.